So we hear the passage from the Gospel of Luke, which is referred to as the Magnificat. Mary had traveled a great distance alone. I think we've looked it up before. It's like 70 miles or so she traveled by herself to visit Elizabeth, who was also pregnant at the time, pregnant with John the Baptist. The Magnificat is a beautiful celebratory song, and it's known as the Magnificat because of the opening word of Mary's famous song in Latin. The Greek meaning of the word is to magnify, to grow, to enlarge. It's thought to be one of the earliest Christian hymns ever recorded, and it is one of 4 in the Gospel of Luke. It's been the subject of a lot of art and music throughout history, most notably in music by Vivaldi and Bach. For most of us, our experience of an announcement of a birth, a child's birth, like for our friend Dave yesterday, who found out his great-grandbaby is going to be a boy, it's a beautiful, wonderful cause of excitement. It's just a wonderful, magical time in our humanity to anticipate the birth of a baby. And it was even more so with Mary. The birth of Jesus, foretold by Gabriel, is shocking news that causes the singer-songwriter in Mary to break out into powerful and, in many ways, rebellious song. Mary sees not only her fortunes, but the fortunes of the whole world are about to change. Her song sings of role reversals of the powerful and the weak, the rich and the hungry. She sings of an old world that is passing away and the birthing of a new world where God's justice and mercy will prevail. God has looked down on his lowly servant, the young, unwed peasant girl. We anticipate probably about 13 or 14 years old, from a little town on the outskirts of empire. In other words, she's from a place where it would have been easy to go unnoticed by God. God could have chosen a woman of power, a woman of wealth and prestige, but God selected a young girl from an occupied territory, a girl who history did not know moments before. We're supposed to realize in this writing, in this reading, that Mary was in many obvious ways a poor selection, an insignificant person from an insignificant place. You could say that Mary was a young girl living with her family on the edge, a tent city in Seattle, or maybe a broken down old trailer with no indoor plumbing in the Maine woods. The Magnificat is Mary's response to the fact that God has indeed selected a nobody from a place that no one knew to be the vehicle through which God would enter the world. And in fact, one might say this is at the heart of the Christmas story. Elizabeth and Zechariah, 2 childless elderly people, were given the opportunity to have a son. And that son, John the Baptist, paved the way for the Messiah to come forward. And Mary and Joseph, who we know so little about, are the very people that God assigned to be the caretakers of Jesus. It is an amazing story if you think about it, if you back it up and think about that. And throughout this Advent season, we talk a lot about waiting. I remember being the mother of young children and even being a young child myself, and the waiting was so hard. Waiting for that magic of Christmas Eve and Christmas, and the waiting can be hard. But this song from Mary, as Mary sung it, is really not a song about waiting as much as a song about a celebration of the present. God had already done such marvelous things with her. And the Magnificat echoes with certainty, joy to the world. The Lord has come. Liberation is accomplished. A little Bible lesson for you, so don't go to sleep on me. Little Bible lesson. There are actually 5 songs of deliverance by women: Miriam in Exodus, Deborah in Judges, Judith in Judith, Hannah in 1 Samuel, and Mary in Luke. And Mary's song directly quotes back to Hannah's song. My heart exalts the Lord in the Lord. My strength is exalted in my God. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in my victory. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble gird on strength. Those who are full have hired themselves up for bread, but those who are hungry are fat with spoil. These texts from these 5 women are a distinct part of women's tradition in Israel. And to hear the Magnificat as Mary's joyful performance of God's victory over injustice puts a wonderful twist on our Advent waiting. Theologian Diana Butler Bass writes, joy and justice, there's no passive waiting here. The Magnificat brings the future hope into the celebratory present. Dancing dissolves the boundary of time. The women of Israel drummed and danced and sang the kingdom into being. No, Advent isn't really about waiting. In Isaiah, we've been reading Isaiah for the last 2 weeks, and if truth be told, we were supposed to read about it today, but I have to be really honest with you because I always am, and I felt like I didn't want to preach on Isaiah again. After I whined and complained to Sue Ellen and asked her to cover for me because I thought I was going to be sick, I decided, and this is kind of in jest, I decided I want to preach about Mary. We've talked about the prophecy for 2 weeks. Today we're talking about Mary. Gosh darn it. And here we are. But Isaiah, after the last 2 weeks, talks about seeing God's vision for the future, trusting God's promises coming, but then acting on its reality. For Mary, the months of her pregnancy aren't about quiet confinement. She invites us to join in her song of joy and dance from that deliverance of oppression, or dance the deliverance of, and dance for deliverance from oppression, In biblical tradition, waiting means looking clearly into the broken world and caring for what is wounded. It means facing down the powers of injustice. It means living the promises of God in the here and the now. It's living into thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, today and every day. The Magnificat is Mary's yes, a song of power. My soul magnifies the Lord. And what does a magnifying glass do? Well, I'm not about literal interpretations. Let's get literal for just a minute. What does a magnifying glass do? It makes things larger, right? It makes things bigger. My gosh, as I'm getting older, I'm feeling like I need to carry one, like a monocle or something. Like, what's going on? Makes things bigger. Through Mary, we see who God is. Her life, her faithfulness brings God's gracious intentions for the world into focus. And I believe this is our call in Advent as well. Well, it's important. It's an important part of our faith to glorify and praise God in this season of Advent, in our reflection of Mary's Magnificat. We might ask ourselves, how do our lives magnify God? Through the lens of our lives, what do others see? Do they see God more clearly? To magnify God, we must be clear as well. If our lens is cloudy, an image of God will get lost. As magnifiers of God, we are also called to be transparent. And let's be honest. Transparency is not easy. I try to model it for you, like telling you my story about not wanting to preach Isaiah. But in truth, it's not easy. especially this time of year when joy and jolliness are almost a requirement. As a pastor, I hear from people about the merriment and the challenge it brings forth for many people who are having a tougher time, maybe those who have lost a loved one, those who have a problem with merriment, I mean, their life isn't so joyful. I hear from people that these, 4 weeks of merriment and revelry and of jolly Christmas cheer just seems so shallow. I see your tears. I see you. It's not always easy. And we're called to be transparent of that too. We're called to transparency, whatever it is, sadness and despair or joyful hope. The church needs to be a place where we can be honest and that we can be real about these emotions, these feelings, these experiences that we have. We're not called to be fake and joyful during Christmas time because we're supposed to be. We're called to be transparent. I heard a story about a man who exemplified what I'm referring to. One Christmas day, as his family was doing what families do in the afternoon of Christmas Day, a knock came to their door. It was a woman who was crying and really pounding on their door. You see, the woman that battled an addiction disorder, she and her husband had a tumultuous relationship. And too much liquor combined with too many expectations led her to be full to overflowing with despair. The man greeted her at the door as if she was an anticipated guest and did his best to cheer her up as the rest of his family slinked away into their rooms, hoping to avoid the situation. The man began playing his organ, getting her to sing Christmas carols with her. He helped her to find a bit of joy. He helped her to find a bit of escape. He helped her to find a bit of the love of the Spirit, something that, in all honesty, eluded her that day and just about every other day. The greatest gift his family experienced that year at Christmas was to witness his gift of hospitality and compassion, which was given without hesitation or reservation. He magnified God by his kindness and his compassion. Sometimes I think simple acts of compassion are what matter most. On Thursday, I was down in the food pantry for a little while, and a woman came in who the previous week had pre-ordered her food. So we have a few different ways you can access the food pantry. You can come in and shop. You can pre-order online and do like a pickup if maybe you can't come in because of your work schedule, or some people don't come in because they have social anxiety and they're too nervous. And other people either put in a pre-order or get a call from a faithful volunteer like Mary, who calls people every week. Sometimes it's the only call they get that week. And then we have delivery volunteers who will deliver the food out to people who can't come to us. But this woman, her name is Sarah, she came into the food pantry and she said, "I'm so happy to see you." She said, I didn't come last week. I had to do pickup. I had to do a pre-order, and I realized in that I really miss seeing everyone and being here, because I realized how much that is so much what this is all about for me, is I get to come in and connect with people and be part of being here. Because when she comes to the food pantry, like everyone who comes to the food pantry, volunteers and shoppers alike, they're greeted with kindness and compassion. Maybe not perfectly, because we are human after all. But these simple acts of kindness and compassion can be what matters most. Even given this most wonderful time of year where joy is the theme of the week and things are supposed to be wonderful, there are people in pain and people in need, and Mary's song recognizes this. She sings for the weak, she sings for the lowly, she sings for the poor, she sings for the hungry, she sings for every hurting son and daughter. She sings, and it's more than just a profound yes, it's a song of defiance too. It's a song that's like the tradition in the song like in the African American tradition of the African American spirituals and protest songs. Her song is a yes, and it's also a song of we shall overcome kind of song. The Magnificat is a counter-testimony to the dysfunction that passes for normal in our world. She's a magnifier, I'll say. Remember when, or maybe this was just me, I was raised in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and we didn't have a lot to do. Remember that whole thing, anyone else, about like if you take a magnifying glass out into the sun, don't ever like put it over an ant because you're going to burn it. Anyone else hear this thing? Yeah, thank you. Right. Because a magnifier can not only make things larger, but it also can catch the sun and a fire can get started. Has it ever actually really happened, though? Oh, it did. It happened to you? You really did set an ant on fire? Okay. Leaves, just leaves. Have no worry. Catching a little light can start a fire as we magnify God. What kind of fire are you going to start? And be careful how you use that line. That didn't come out so right. Every time we say no to injustice, we're starting a fire. So how about it? Are we going to say yes to God, at the same time say no to injustice? Are we going to magnify God this year? Are we going to magnify God today? Are we already doing that? May it be so, my friends. May you find the power and the confidence to magnify God and say yes. May it be so. Amen.